Good evening. Welcome to the City Commission work session, Tuesday, February 11th. Would you call the roll, please, and see if we have a quorum?
Mayor McCullough?
Yes.
Commissioner Adamchak?
Yes.
Commissioner Opelt?
Here.
Commissioner Minton?
Here.
Commissioner Mata?
Here.
Okay.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on our work session, before we do that, I just wanted to say, I think the mayor could have a prerogative of making a comment or two. We're going to have more snow. And so I think Manhattan's to be really lauded for the way we took care of each other during the last snow. And we really made sure that, people were okay. What's happening now in the news, and I know you all read about it, a lot of people who live in Manhattan work for the university or work for the federal government, and who knows where everything's going to end up. But I think there are many of our neighbors and friends who are, at the moment, feeling very insecure. Kansas has 17,880 federal workers, and that turns into 6,000 Veterans Affairs. And of course, we have a lot of veterans here, and we want to make sure. The Department of Ag employs 1,500, Transportation 700, EPA 600, and Interior 400. And those are a lot of our friends and neighbors. And their life situation now is sort of up in the air. So let's see what we can do to really kind of make sure that everybody knows that we're there for them in the next few kind of crazy weeks that are coming. Okay, the first thing on our, and only thing on our agenda, is to look at Housing Rehabilitation and Repair Assistance Program. I think that's Stephanie.
Did you all want to take a motion on whether you wanted to hear public comment on this item?
Yeah, I'll move that we allow for public comment.
Second.
Commissioner Adamchak?
Yes.
Commissioner Opelt?
Yes.
Commissioner Minton?
Yes.
Commissioner Mata?
Yes.
Mayor McCullough?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Good. Good evening, Stephanie Peterson, Director of Community Development. This evening's item for you is to get your comments and feedback on a proposed home rehabilitation and repair assistance program. The program goal is to provide an efficient and responsive program to maintain a safe and habitable housing stock within our community. This program goal was really developed based on some of the feedback that we heard during our October conversation with you. So I will just say that this is really a skeleton of a program. These are, as a team and as staff, as we worked through this is what our recommendations are, and we want to get a sense of if we're kind of in line with where you're wanting to go as well. So we would recommend that this is a reimbursement program. This is how we ran the CDBG program, meaning that the cost has to be incurred, and then we would reimburse that, in this case, that nonprofit after that work is completed. And that program would be for critical home repairs and rehabilitation, which we define on a next slide. We are recommending $100,000 a year of the workforce housing sales tax be dedicated to this program. And then we wanted to make sure that there was a portion of this funding that's reserved for emergency repairs. These are things like HVAC repairs. If a furnace goes out on a day like today or tomorrow, we want to make sure that there's entities that can get in there and get that home habitable for the individuals residing there. There's a couple, based on your feedback, there's a couple of different ways that we can structure this. For the emergency repairs, if you're comfortable with that 10% allocation being set aside for that, staff could oversee and award those requests as they come in, if that's something that you're okay with. So then the remainder, the 90% that isn't reserved for emergency repairs, that would also be a reimbursement basis. The way that we were we were thinking of structuring this, and you all may have thoughts here, is that we would have, and I get into the process on a later slide, but we would have a organization apply. We would award them, say, $90,000, and then they would just every time that they did a repair, they would come back in and we would reimburse them for that expense. So it would be a one-time, we're calling it a funding agreement, and then we would identify how many homes they plan to provide service to. I'll clarify that with the process as we go forward. As far as who is eligible to apply for the grant funds, we are recommending it be a state-registered 501c3 nonprofit organization that provides repair or rehabilitation services as part of their mission. I would, note at this time that after we met with you in October, we did meet with a couple of different nonprofit organizations that we were told did similar type of work. One of those is Habitat for Humanity. The other one is Shepherd's Crossing. Shepherd's Crossing does the more emergency repair side of things. They currently have a couple of different I would say volunteers and that will contribute money when someone's water heater goes out to get a new one. So those are the two organizations that we talked with. We kind of asked if there was others out there. We haven't heard, but we'll make sure that if there is anybody else that provides this service, that they get a notice of these funds being available as well. And then as far as projects that would be eligible for the assistance, we have in here that they should be owner occupied. They obviously located inside the city limits since it's city funding. And then for the income limitations, we're really allowing the nonprofit's mission statement or clientele to suffice here, other than we would have a restriction where no household that exceeds the 120% area median income could benefit from these funds. That 120% is the upper end of our local workforce definition. So getting into the program specifics, this is pretty similar to CDBG, just kind of revised some of the maximum funding amounts. Though we split these into 4 different categories, which helps us to just kind of identify what the eligibility criteria that's below, kind of what category those would fall into. And so the home rehabilitation and repair, this is kind of a comprehensive type of program. These are things that could be pretty expensive, like replacing a roof if there's any sort of foundation repair. Those typically fall into that category. For the manufactured home repair, so those are mobile homes, the max of that is $2,500, and then we say that it should be less than 30 years old. That was a requirement we had under CDBG as well. And then you can see there, as far as ADA accessibility improvements, these would be things like if there's a ramp that's needed from the exterior in order to access the home, or if there's some sort of sidewalk on the property that needs to be improved so that individual can get from their vehicle or from public right-of-way into their home. And then emergency repair, I kind of defined that earlier, water heaters, furnaces. If there's a plumbing issue that's immediate, that's causing, that could potentially flood that home, that would fit under that category. And then I have here further list of eligible repairs. We tried to, these are kind of categorized by making sure that we continue to preserve our housing stock. So you'll notice that there aren't any sort of cosmetic repairs on here. We really just want to maintain the integrity of the structure itself. One thing I would note for the program categories is we would recommend that for if we're spending $20,000 on a structure, that we should have a mortgage that goes along with that. What that mortgage does, and the nonprofit would be required to go through that process. That mortgage would ensure for kind of a period to be determined, maybe it's for 5 years, that if that homeowner were to sell that home, we would be able to recoup part of the expense, so they wouldn't be able to profit off of that repair. Some of this we can still kind of work through the details on, but that is something that we did have under our CDBG program, and that's just a way to make sure that those funds continue to, that there's a way to kind of recoup those funds if someone's only going to benefit from it for a year. And then the program process, this is where we can kind of start outlining how this would work. So our kind of our idea right now is that we would issue a notice of funding availability. This would make sure that if there isn't a nonprofit that we had an opportunity to meet with, that they are aware that this funding is out there. That NOFA would say, this is the program specific, these are the guidelines of the program, just kind of all the details that we went through. It would outline that so they knew what was eligible. Then the nonprofit would apply for funding. They would need to say the dollar amount that they are requesting, and that would be for that entire year, and the number of units that they believe that they can rehab or repair with that amount of funding. Then staff would recommend basically review our applications, come to you all and say, based on what we received, here's our recommendation as far as the agencies to fund and the amount that they've requested. And then at that, most likely, we'll be looking at a very small number of agencies. So probably at that same meeting, we would bring to you a funding agreement or some sort of other agreement that would outline the specifications of how they can spend that fund. That's a reimbursement program, all the details that we already went through. I mentioned that the nonprofit would be reimbursed only after a project is complete. There would be no funding that's provided up front. And then we are suggesting that the nonprofit provide an annual report back to you all with a couple of different items that are highlighted here. We can certainly add any other metrics that you would like to monitor. And we know we're a little late from having this go at the first of the year, but we're hoping that we could issue that NOFA around the 1st of March, and then that way we could start having funding identified for the first round of projects. That is my overview for you. I would be happy to answer any questions, or if you have any feedback at this time, that would be great.
Questions?
Stephanie, do you have an idea? $100,000 doesn't seem like a whole lot to me.
Agree.
Under the CBDG, can you give us an idea of how much was spent and how many units were repaired under that program?
Yeah, so I think it was on average was between like 75,000 or 85,000 that actually went into a structure. And between all four of these different categories, we could do it was like 4 and 7 a year. It really depended on we couldn't do very many comprehensive just because of the cost and the time that was associated with those.
And do you have any sense of, do we have a waiting list? Do you have a sense of the number of units that are in queue, if you will?
Yeah, there's probably individuals in this room that could speak to that further, but I know when Josh Brewer spoke in October at our work session, I think he said there was a waiting list of 20-some homes that they have. Maybe not all of those would be eligible based on these criteria, but I do think that there is a need out there.
Do you think we may be able to do more than the 7 or 8 that we did in previous years through this program?
Yeah, I think the only limitation is going to be how much funding we want to dedicate to it. It's certainly we've removed a lot of the red tape and the bureaucracy of it, so it'll go much quicker. People won't have to wait a year to get the funding, but I think that goes back to, do you want all of those projects to be a comprehensive rehab that could be up to $20,000? Do you want to kind of just see what the need is?
Sorry. I think it would be important to see what the need is,
Sure.
certainly.
Yeah.
I am a member of the Fairy Godmothers. I don't know if some of the people here are members of that organization or the Guardians, but I've been with that group for many, many years, and these kinds of immediate remediations are their second or third highest need that they push the money out for each year through Shepherd's Crossing.
Yeah.
Sorry, just can I ask one
yeah.
more? So are you looking at $100,000 as a maximum amount per year, or if, say, by October or November, we've exhausted that amount, would you come back to us to say there continues to be a need? Would we be willing to allocate more funds to this project?
I think that's really a question for you all, and how you would like that structured. If you would like for us to do that, to start out with 100,000 and then see how quickly we go through that, we can certainly report back and see if there's an interest in providing additional funding towards this.
How did you arrive at the 100,000 figure?
It was more than what we had available through CDBG, and so we felt like that was a pretty good starting point. That's really it. It's we get about $800,000 a year is what we've been collecting in workforce housing sales tax, just to give you a reference point there.
And sorry, Peter, I'm asking more than just one,
Go
but
ahead.
if we do contract with Habitat, for example, what's in it for them besides doing the work? I mean, I noticed that you had administration up to 15% of the allocation for our staff, but,
That could be
That
for
was
them.
actually for them.
oh,
That was for the nonprofit, so that they could claim up to 15% of their administrative costs for overseeing the program, which I think is a win because we spent a lot more as city staff on CDBG and the administration of it. And I know this is something that Habitat has talked about, is that there's sometimes funding out there for the improvements, but there's not funding for their administration of the programs.
okay.
So would we,
Agree.
are we looking at limiting this to just one organization? Or is it just like, if you can apply and meet the qualifications, then we'll set up an agreement with you for the money that you request?
I think it's a little difficult to say right now because I'm only aware of one organization that provides this. I think that we should at least keep it open. If there is another nonprofit out there that's doing something similar, that's ultimately going to be up to your discretion as to whether you want to allocate funding to both or just focus on one.
So, go ahead, Susan.
I prepared for tonight.
You did.
Do you have a sense, oh, shoot, now I was teasing and now I forgot my question. It had to do with the speed with which Shepherd's Crossing would be able to respond to the money, the amount you suggested holding back, I don't know, $20,000, $10,000
$10,000,
for emergency repairs. So that's one place where I could see possibly contracting with two different organizations if they're able to do those
Correct.
rapid repairs more quickly.
Yeah, that's kind of
Yes.
what I was thinking.
Sorry, okay. So in my mind, we have kind of two different categories. And I should have, Katie actually suggested I split this out, and I had already submitted my slides. So I would say that there's the critical repair, that's more of the comprehensive type, the $90,000 that would go towards, I just switched slides, that would go towards pretty much these first three. And then there's this emergency repair, that's what Shepherd's Crossing looks for, and their biggest obstacle there is funding. And just Fairy Godmothers is a generous donor when they have somebody come in. So I do envision that there's probably going to be, for these critical rehabs, these first 3 points, maybe Habitat does that for point 4. It's Shepherd's Crossing. Not to say that Habitat couldn't do that emergency repair as well. We just knew that there were other organizations out there that were providing those emergency repairs.
Jamie, did you want?
Well, now I can't remember because Susan and I were joking. No, Project Max, that's just how much we would give out of this to those. Those projects could be larger than that. So then I had a question more on like, are we reimbursing when the entire project is complete, or are we, I might be getting too in the weeds, but just on how that works. So if we're,
Oh, are you thinking like, if they have a $100,000 project, but they're gonna fund 20% of it through us, are we gonna make them finish the entire project before we reimburse, or just our portion?
I think that would depend on the scope of the work. So let's say that they're using our funding to replace a roof, but then they're doing other rehabilitation of the rest of the structure. If they can go in and show, we've already completed the roof work, can we be reimbursed for this? I think that is probably doable. Under CDBG, the entire project had to be closed out. So, but we do want to be more
we have
flexible
some
than.
flexibility.
Yep.
I think reimbursement is smart. I do worry about some of the organization's ability to upfront pay for some of the costs, so I don't know if that's a barrier, but we reimbursed previously.
We had to, yes.
That was how it went.
And sometimes we had long periods of carrying costs to try to get an owner to sign the final completion. That could have been several months that they were actually carrying that $20,000 amount.
Okay. I think I'm with I think the rest of the group, and that 100,000 doesn't seem like a lot, and if there's a need for it, I think we've all recognized this program is a really good way to get to that workforce housing category. I think we've seen that construction's going to be really challenging to be able to utilize too many of those funds. So, I would like, if there's needs and people who can complete that, I think I'm on the side of let's spend and get some of those projects going. I know we'll have more discussion around it, but.
And I do think for the annual report, one of the things, I don't have it here. One of the things that I do think that we should require is what kind of matching funds went into a project, just so that you're able to show that there's been multiple sources that have been leveraged. There's going to be some projects that there isn't another source, but I do think that would be good information for us to track.
Yeah.
Stephanie, you're probably aware that Josh sent all of the commissioners a letter in support of this project. And he recommended going with an RFQ rather than RFP. What's your feeling about that?
We won't do an RFP or an RFQ. Our recommendation is to do a notice of funding availability. This is similar to what SysFab does to say this funding is available. We'll have a lot more tight restrictions or requirements that somebody has to meet. But it would be, I guess it would be more along, it's kind of a hybrid approach. It's hard to fit those in there. We don't want a proposal, I would say. We also want to know that that entity is qualified, but that will be part of that requirement. They need to demonstrate that they have either they contract with licensed contractors or they have a contractor's license themselves. There's certain questions that they'll have to answer to make sure that we're being good stewards of this funds.
Okay.
Commissioners, one of the things that I just wanted to weigh in on really quick here, I know there is an interest in increasing that $100,000 program amount. One of the things I would caution you all is that we still have applications for workforce housing sales tax dollars that I think we just accepted them, or we'll just start taking them.
April 1.
We'll start taking them on April 1. So I think if you all want to increase that dollar amount to, $150, I think that's certainly reasonable. But I would caution us to kind of wait to see what kind of applications that come through, what other kind of needs we see in the community. And then as we have our budget conversations, we'll have more information heading into 2026, and we can consider raising that amount from that $100,000 or $150,000 for this particular program.
But I mean, we could also request that we start with 100,000 and we leave it open-ended as pending whatever projects are coming through from the April 1 request and whatever might come through later. So even if we say we're going to start with 100,000, that can come back to be reviewed.
I think, most of our social services are very much wired into each other and know what's appropriate for each group. Obviously, Shepherd's Crossing, if you have a hot water heater that breaks, that would be a much more appropriate place to go for funding for that than to have Habitat, And then, of course, Shepherd's Crossing does go to Fairy Godmothers, and they do a lot of these kinds of one-time, a lot of car repairs, but one-time issues, that really put people back in their house. So I think, I think this is a really good idea. I was sad to see the CDBG money go away but I know what a bureaucratic hassle that was. So I think this is much smarter. And, we can revisit this in September, October, and just see where we are. I think, without making any in cement decisions tonight. I mean, I think I'm fine with 100,000, and then we'll see what kinds of things come up.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we've spent 100,000 on housing rehab by October, it speaks to the success of the program, honestly, because especially it being a reimbursement, that means that we're getting stuff done very quickly, and it certainly would be worth a second look. And I mean, we've got quite a bit in this fund, and I know we're gonna commit some of it in April. But yeah, I mean, if we look at it in October, we'll have a better idea of where we are and what we're looking at for the next year. So.
And I think often, and Mel can attest to this, we had a group called Home back in the 90s that really just did things like help people age in place. You know, the ramp, the light over your porch, you know, this kind of thing that was really, seems to most of us be rather insignificant, but it really did allow people to stay in their home longer.
Yep.
And that's good for everybody's bottom line. So thank you, Stephanie.
Sure. Mayor, one of your previous points of the coordination, I forgot to mention, when we were talking with Shepherd, actually we talked with a couple of different nonprofits and they were like, we don't do this. And there was a consensus that Habitat and Shepherd's Crossing were really the two that did this. So there is communication, and Shepherd's Crossing did share with us that if it's something beyond a water heater or a furnace replacement, they do send people to Habitat. So that is their go-to resource if it's something outside of their comfort.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments from you guys? We have two people signed up for public comment. Donna Shank-Hamlin.
Thank you. Donna Shank-Hamlin, 1922 Leavenworth. On behalf of the board and staff of Habitat for Humanity of the Northern Flint Hills, I would like to share our support for the proposed use of workforce housing sales tax dollars in the city's home rehabilitation program. That program has successfully preserved 227 homes across Manhattan neighborhoods since 1999. Now, our executive director, Josh Brewer, submitted a letter to the commissioners, but I'd like to read 3 recommendations that he offers for consideration during this work session. These ideas are based on the experience of our agency, which operated a home preservation program since 2017, involving maintenance, critical home repair, rehabilitation, and weatherization. We have preserved over 80 homes in our larger service area, including 28 in Manhattan, and have demonstrated compliance with CDBG funding requirements. Now, as was stated in your October work session, our Habitat affiliate has sought a contractual relationship with the City of Manhattan to provide repair and rehabilitation services for low to moderate income homeowners. In response to this proposed program, we would respectfully offer the following recommendations. 1, follow an RFQ selection process to better fit with the program activity. Following the issuance of the Notice of Funding Availability, issue a request for qualifications instead of a request for proposals, because the program's scope, units, activity type are unknown prior to the application. Given the reimbursement basis of funds, this process could allow a qualified agency more flexibility in providing services up to that authorized funding limit. 2, simplify the funding categories based on property status rather than program activity, as the primary distinction is between real property, which is eligible for specific financing, and personal property, such as manufactured housing. The limits on funding availability should be based on property status. Emergency repairs and accessibility modifications should be managed by the selected agency contractor in the same manner as other critical home repairs. The third, issue subsidy retention and recapture thresholds. It's our position that public subsidies should be retained and recaptured when practical to increase program sustainability and the public trust. We would suggest practical thresholds of $2,500 for subsidy retention and $5,000 for subsidy recapture. The agencies who are qualified to administer housing preservation programs should be experienced in subsidy management. In summary, the Housing Rehabilitation Program has been a great benefit to low-income homeowners, to future homeowners, and neighbors. We want to thank city staff for the work on this program and your commitment to a Manhattan community where everyone has a decent place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I ask Stephanie to respond to that? How does that differ in what we've been talking about?
You mean the property status versus the,
Yeah, well, RFQ and all that.
can you go back a couple slides, Stephanie? So instead of limiting it by program categories, the recommendation or the request is to change it to what real property versus personal property?
Yeah, so and I'm speculating a little bit here, but my guess would be that we would just say no more than $20,000 per structure can be spent, but we wouldn't be able to break out whether that's an ADA accessibility improvement, if it's to limit how much we spend on those, to limit how much we spend on emergency repairs. It would just be limiting how much funding can go towards any individual property. And so we would differentiate between a permanent structure and then a manufactured home, is my understanding of the recommendation there.
So does Habitat's, their suggestions work with what we're talking about? Or are
So
there
I think their
some- are
suggestion
some
is there would
bumps?
just be these two categories here. The home rehab for permanent structures and then manufactured homes. We wouldn't have, for us, it's important for us to distinguish, I think, between emergency repair because we do have other agencies within the community that potentially would provide that service. And then ADA accessibility improvements, we really wanted to make sure you can spend a lot on ADA accessibility, especially inside the home. We wanted to make sure that we were able to address the structure of homes as well as provide ramps or sidewalks or whatever needs to be there.
Stephanie, I'm not sure if you can answer this question or if we need to bring Donna back, but I am a little bit confused by this idea of subsidy retention and recapture. Can you explain that a little bit?
I would like to hear how they are defining that. So if you don't mind, if Donna can
No,
provide a
not at
response to
all.
it?
It's
Okay.
a work session. We can be flexible.
Boy, am I on the spot. Most of my experience is not with repairs, it is more with community land trusts. And in that concept, the idea of retaining the subsidy has to do with recycling the improvements, the gradual equity on resale to a income-qualified household. However, there are retention agreements in CDBG, as I understand it. And in that, there are threshold dollar values and years defined such that, for example, if you had a $15,000 limit or threshold and a 3-year period, then if you move away before that is accomplished, you have to pay back into the fund, you being the homeowner. In recapture, what we're talking about more is paying back when the home is sold. And that is very parallel with a community land trust. What you're doing is keeping the value of the improvements, but at resale, then it gets repaid.
Okay.
Does that help?
Thank you.
So then I can speak to, I just wanted to make sure we were using the same nomenclature. So then I can speak to a little bit how we did this under CDBG. That's not to say that we have to do it this way here. We would actually propose that after, say, a 5-year period, that loan would be fully forgiven. Again, we're trying to preserve that structure. And so if somebody comes in and says, we need help replacing our roof, after 5 years of them being in that home, if they were to sell it or move on, we wouldn't require them to repay anything because we've already improved that structure and somebody else can benefit from it. But we also don't want people to take advantage of the program by saying, I need to resell my house, so I'm gonna have some improvements done, and then be able to earn some sort of revenue or earn some sort of money back with that. As far as the retention part, that would be like that 5 years. And I think that's just a pretty, I think it's a pretty reasonable amount of time. CDBG, we did 10 years. That seems just very, very long. 5 years seems like a good amount of time. And then after that, you really don't see that value maybe as much as when you first had that improvement made.
And is it incumbent on whichever organization wins the award or to monitor the status of that household over the next 5 years?
Correct. So they would have a mortgage on that property. So if it were to be sold, the title company, I believe, is who typically lets us know that we have a mortgage and that we need to, that it's what's the payoff of that. So that's part of this annual report, is they would provide an update of any outstanding mortgages that they have and any mortgages that maybe were released. Now, let's say that we have a 5-year retention and year 3 they decide to sell. What we typically did was a prorated amount for that 5 years. We could work through what that amount is, but they would have to pay something back upon selling it, and that would go back into the program for us to divvy out again to another project.
But this is, just so I'm clear, I mean, this is not a mortgage in this, it is a mortgage, I understand, but it's not anything that the homeowner is paying a monthly.
Correct,
fee
no.
on.
No, they don't. It's almost, I don't want to use the word lien, but that's probably a more what you associate
Yeah.
with.
Yeah, so that way, it's a, just a kind of a legal,
It shows up on title work.
Yeah.
So if you go to sell something, it shows that you owe money or you have some sort of obligation to an organization.
yeah. So that way, we're not having to track all of these properties and make sure that they're not sold early, right? And
Correct, yeah. We normally get notified because that'll pop up during that closing process.
yeah. And I think it sounds kind of similar, you know, they're the same, I think, idea as what Habitat is proposing. It's just a little bit different in the details.
And I would say that if it's of interest to you, after we put out that notice of funding availability and have that application, if there are the 2 entities that we think are going to apply, we'd be happy to sit down with them and kind of work through some of these details, if you would like to see us do that.
Yeah. Again, I think flexibility is key for this one, and let's yeah.
On the program categories,
Yes.
I do want to point out, I'm supportive of the ones we have listed. I understand what Habitat was recommending, but I want to make sure we're staying on focus, that our responsibility with that funding is to improve housing stock. And so I can't really speak to item number 2 on the manufactured homes, just not knowing much about that. But on 3 and 4, I think that is important for the person, but maybe not in maintaining that as workforce housing stock. I'm trying to say that
Yeah.
if everyone understands that, I think it's important that the maximum amounts going into maintaining the stock in that entity, not necessarily that individual in that entity.
Correct. So that was really our focus, was trying to preserve the structure itself. We already have a lot of really great nonprofits that focus on the individuals that are living within the homes. And so we didn't want to tread on the work that they're already doing. So that's why you see a lot of these are just focused on the physical home.
Yeah, I guess when I see the, you know, ADA accessibility 2,500, that's more of like a bare minimum safety kind of thing, like we talked about ramps and things like that.
Yes.
In that, yeah, there are a lot of other things that we could do that could be included in that, but then you start talking about very, very high price tags, and very specialized type of work as well. And yeah, I think there are other organizations that would be better at that than.
We have one more person who'd like to speak.
Hey, Jerry, don't forget the timer. Yeah, Kirk will probably want to talk.
Good evening, Mel Borst of 1918 Humboldt Street, and I support this program proposal, and I think it's an excellent use of the workforce tax income that you're getting. I observed over the decades with the community development rehabilitation program of homes in the older neighborhoods that it is indeed a great benefit to the homeowners that needed it, and also a stabilizing influence on their surroundings in their neighborhood. So I just want to give my full support for this. Thanks.
Me? Yeah. No, we're winning. I'm not gonna mess it up. No thank you. No thank you.
I thought you were getting out.
No, but thank you.
Danielle, do you have any advice to give us on this subject? I mean, I think we pretty much understand what's going on, but just from a managerial stance.
No, this is the recommendation. Stephanie and her staff have worked very closely with our office, the city manager's office, and we are very confident with the recommendation that we have put forward to you all this evening.
I don't think this involves a motion or anything, but just positive feedback, and I'm hearing nothing else. John, do you have anything you want to add?
Nope, I'm good with the program and good with starting with 100, and then we can look at it as things go and see how much money we have.
Okay, thank you.
I would just like to also thank Stephanie and her staff for following up on this. I think that many of us were concerned about the suspension of the CBDG, and it seems like a very sensible way of proceeding.
Okay,
And thank you for your collaboration with the community organizations as well.
we will move on to city manager briefing.
Jared's going to put the calendar up there for you all. If you would take an opportunity, if you all want to discuss any of those items up there, if there's anything commissioners want to talk about. I'm going to do a quick aside with Community Development Director Peterson really quick.
Oh, wow. Okay, is there anything we want to talk about? I would suggest that at the joint city-county meeting on the 20th, we bring up some items that we've been discussing, and we really need to kind of bring to the forefront, particularly Seco Park, and particularly the county's agreement on the RHIDs. So, I mean, you know, if we're going to get an absolute no, we're kind of treading water and getting nowhere.
I think that's reasonable. I also reached out to Danielle this week to find out where we stood with the warming center and
Yeah.
communications.
Good point.
And she indicated that Chief French has been meeting with stakeholders and that some resolution has been reached, at least for the immediate future.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised with the county's reaction at the intergovernmental because having been through a couple disasters, the county was the person that kind of pulled everybody together because they have the emergency management team. So I think we do need to check on that and see, you know, I hope it doesn't get so cold and awful tomorrow that, you know, we have people in trouble. Any other thoughts on that?
No. I think, yeah, next Thursday, we got a good opportunity, and hopefully we can have a good conversation with Riley County.
Yeah, a week from Thursday. Yeah.
What's that?
A week from Thursday.
Next Thursday, yeah.
It's next,
Thursday next week.
Oh, it's next?
yes.
I thought it was the 20th.
Yeah, Thursday
is.
next week.
That's the same
I see
date.
what
Today's
you're
the
saying.
14th,
It's the 14th.
the 11th. Today's the 11th.
Yeah, you know, I think there's a lot of dialogue to be had there. I think the last meeting where we went over RHID was probably, it wasn't the first time, but
I think it was the first time.
no, we had gone over it earlier
Oh.
last year, but that was the very first, like, yeah, so it was probably the second time that they had heard more of the details, and it can be kind of confusing. So maybe that now that they've had some time to digest it and look at their policy, we can have a better conversation about that and start talking about SECO.
Danielle, looking at the calendar, this is minor, but I thought that I had replied for the afternoon session of the Incident Command System Overview. I will double check with Lauren about that.
Okay.
Mike, you're on the,
Yeah, I think,
No, Susan's on the.
She's got me on the evening.
The 5:30.
oh,
to
the afternoon,
9:30.
not
Yeah.
the evening.
so what are we gaining from that? I mean, is it required? I mean,
It is not required.
yeah,
You can attend the afternoon or the evening session. That is entirely up to you. I would probably defer to Chief French to talk a little bit about the specifics that you all would be learning in that 4-hour session. But it's my understanding that it's really training for elected officials on how you would respond and what is expected from you during an emergency I think that that would range from all things from the winter storm event that we had a few weeks ago, all the way up to if we were to have a tornado or something very traumatic happen to our community. So just kind of
I know.
understanding what that process is for you all.
There are often things that one doesn't think about, like all the trains that go through Manhattan, and if a truck full of anhydrous pneumonia, ammonia fell over on points. So, yeah, I see the values of this. I just didn't quite understand who was putting it on, and,
Yeah, so I believe it is, Chief, is it Emergency Manager Johnson, or State?
State.
CADEM, Kansas Department of Emergency Management, is hosting it.
yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Intergovernmental? I did bring up at the last intergovernmental, I'd like to know what K-State's plan for 1,200 cows north of Meadowlark is.
Is it still happening?
Well, I don't know, maybe they have no money now. But it was happening 3 weeks ago. I just, think it's something that we,
Yeah.
yeah. And our K-State person didn't seem to know anything about it, but,
Well, perhaps Danielle can get in touch with Grant and let him know that we'd like to learn more.
Danielle, are you meeting with Linton and the others? It seems like we don't have the communication going with K-State that we've had with some of our past presidents.
Yeah, so I believe, still kind of trying to get through all the cycle of, I
Sure,
think we meet
sure.
with K-State quarterly, with Dr. Stewart, President Linton's office. I meet with them quarterly, so I've only had that first quarterly meeting. I do know that Jared meets with Grant and another group of folks from the university. Is that monthly?
Yeah, we meet monthly, and that includes Chief French and then Ronnie Grice, as well as our infrastructure folks, so like Brian Johnson, and then Casey Lauer would be the counterpart at K-State to talk about all infrastructure projects, and then, of course, Grant from the president's office is there, too. Stephanie also attends, just so that we can collaborate on upcoming projects, community engagement. So that's been a good relationship that we meet monthly there, too.
So I've only had that opportunity to meet with them once, but I'm sure that's scheduled for the first quarter at some point.
Okay. Other questions for Danielle?
Couple things that I had. I did ask Stephanie to give you all a very quick update on where we are with our community development block grant funding. She's going to give you all an update on that really quick. But before I have her talk about that, I'll let you do that and then I'll get back up here. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
We are working on our next 5-year plan. So part of Community Development Block Grant requires us to put together a consolidated plan that covers 5 years. It is very guided in that there's specific questions that we have to answer. So we don't have a lot of autonomy in what's included in that. But right now, one of our team members has been meeting with social services. There's a survey option, and then they're also doing one-on-one conversations. Some of those entities like MHA, Manhattan Housing Authority, we have a lot of questions because they have to provide us data for this plan. So it's really a lot of data collection and then a summary over the next 5 years, what we want to focus on. So you'll be seeing that probably in the next 2 months or so. It'll come before you to be approved. And then after that document is in place, we'll begin working on our annual action plan, which actually takes our yearly allocation and then it allocates that based on the different program areas. Do you want any more detail than that?
No, I think that
Okay.
is great. Thank you very much. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for Stephanie regarding our CDBG funding?
No, I would just urge you to note that the health department's doing a needs assessment for Riley County, and so don't duplicate, let's use their numbers if we can.
We did talk with them about that. It's going to be done after we have to have this
okay.
approved per HUD requirements. So we missed
Well, they
that.
can use your numbers then.
Yeah, we can certainly work those in though to our annual plan if we need to make any recommendations or any changes to that.
Is that the community survey that Flint Hills Wellness Coalition is working on?
It's called a community needs assessment, yeah. Anything else?
Thank you.
Danielle, we're running your, yeah, getting your steps in.
Haven't gotten them in all day. So the last thing I just wanted to share with you all this evening, with the winter weather that is coming in and with the heavy snow precipitation anticipated between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m., we have made the decision to close city offices tomorrow. We will evaluate if we are able to open, depending on weather, later in the afternoon, our recreation centers. I did want, of course, we have our public works crews will be coming in, anticipating around midnight. That's when we're really starting to expect that precipitation to start falling with ambient temperatures, road temperatures. Really think that precipitation is going to stick. They are anticipating about 4 to 7 inches. So it's not 15, but it is still a significant snowfall. So I also did want Chief French just to come up and brief you all on those conversations that he has been having with our community partners who work with those folks who are unhoused in our community and with the warming shelter.
Could I also just say that Thursday morning, a little later start for some of our people that have to drive in might not be a bad idea.
Sure.
Because, those extra kind of hours give people a little safety.
I had to be at the chamber event at 7:30 this morning.
Well,
I'm always ready for a later.
And I would, excuse me,
No, go ahead.
Chief, if I would just like to say that it looked as if roads that I used coming over here today have already been treated. If that's the case, thank you very much, and appreciate that Public Works is on that.
Yep, we will be sure to pass the message along to the crew. Thank you.
So just a real quick brief where we're at. Yesterday, we started with the Emergency Operations Center. We had a Zoom meeting with all the stakeholders. Been in constant communication with Be Able, the Center of Hope Ministries, as well as Conza United Way, just to make sure all the social service agencies are aware. We are starting to meet, and we're going to continue meeting through the end of the week, at least twice a day. And they have my contact as well as the Emergency Operations Center's contact. So if they need anything, we're here to help support them. At this point, they feel comfortable with what's going on. They've got a good plan for this evening, and hopefully, this is a volunteer-based system, so as long as they can keep up the volunteers and they have that, they'll be able to operate just fine. But I would, encourage anybody that has a desire to stay up all night, that they have a volunteer sign up. You're more than welcome to sign up and help them out, not only just these next couple of days, but they are operating through into March. So they're always looking for volunteers that can help. And we're here to help support them. And I think they're aware that we're here and they appreciate it. So
we could just urge people to stay in tomorrow.
yes. Yeah.
Okay, other questions? We do not have to take action on this. We've sent the proposal, and so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I just had one quick thing. March 18th, I think Peter and I both said we were gone. Are we canceling? I know that's looking ahead. That's a legislative night. I think it's the 3rd.
We will take a look at that agenda. Right now, the only thing that we had on there is a licensing and permitting software agreement, potentially, but we can look at maybe moving that to March 4th or the first meeting in April. So we'll take a look at that agenda, and we might be able
Are there
to.
5 Tuesdays in March?
No.
No, okay.
No.
And, sorry, just one other point of clarification. Our city office is closed next Monday.
They are not. We are open on President's Day.
Okay.
Did you make your motion?
She made a motion, but I don't think it got seconded yet.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Opelt,
Yes.
Commissioner Minton,
Sure.
Commissioner Motta,
Yes.
Mayor McCullough,
Yes.
Commissioner Adamchak.
Yes.
Motion passes.